Welcome today, everyone. It's 4th of July here in America. It's Independence Day. I'm Echo in the ENLTN studio again here with my esteemed colleague and friendly guest, Shanleigh Wilson, out in San Diego. How are you doing today?
I am good. I'm happy to be here. Happy to see you again.
Likewise. And we thought we would do a little discussion today on freedom, all the manners of what that means and whatever else is to come. We don't even know yet. We're free to decide what is going to come in the conversation.
That's right.
All right. Awesome.
So, as you know, I practice EFT, which stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. And I've been thinking a lot about what that means to be emotionally free and what is freedom in general. I was listening last night to this really great talk on the app, and of course I can't remember the name of the person speaking, but I love his whole series. But anyway, he was talking about the concept of boundaries as creating freedom, because within boundaries, within structure, we are free to flow. And specifically, the Waking Up app is all about meditation. So he was talking about this in the context of meditation. And I feel like it really applies. I mean, essentially, that's the same thing that we're doing with the EFT, with the emotional freedom. It's the same idea that when we give attention and structure around the uncomfortableness, sure, it doesn't actually create more uncomfortableness. It does the opposite. By letting it be, it creates freedom to flow. And with that freedom to flow, the good stuff comes out too. So it's a sort of counterintuitive thing where it's like you create structure to create freedom and flow. You create more allowance and acceptance of what you don't want to allow more flow of what you do want. So it's a really interesting idea that I was just playing with in my mind this morning.
Yeah, that's great.
How that structure boundaries, kind of function. It creates function, essentially.
Yeah, I really think that there's so many people that discuss that idea of creating the structure or the routine is what allows a person then to have freedom, because you have a certain stability of known factors. And from there, you're allowed to kind of reach out, explore, expand. I think about it when I deal with clients in the design world, or so to speak. If I have no idea what they're looking for, in what direction or industry or demographic, I mean, it would take me forever to make any progress or get anywhere. And that'd be a lot of exploration, but it really wouldn't be effective or efficient in any way. And I think a lot of us want to actually make progress in our life, whatever we're working on or working toward. And so many people talk about the counterintuitivity of this aspect of life, as well as others, where we think it's one thing, but it's really the other. And so for those people who aren't rehearsed or schooled in EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, what is Emotional Freedom Technique, EFT?
So it's, dare I say, a modality.
Yes.
It's a modality for really being with yourself, for exploring your own consciousness, your own experience, the realness of your experience, and allowing what needs to flow, what needs to be expressed, what needs to be understood, to be felt and processed. So essentially, it's a therapeutic modality. But it can be used in lots of different ways. It can be used to target specifically negative emotions. And when I say target, I mean target with your attention, not so much like pew pew with missiles. But that's kind of how we feel, right? A lot when our negative emotions are coming up. We're like, ooh, how do I get rid of this? And again, that counterintuitive thing, it's not so much about getting rid of it. And in EFT, we're really sitting with it. We're really letting ourselves be with those emotions and creating a safe space, especially in our bodies, but also with our consciousness and with our attention to be with these aspects of ourselves in our experience that feel really uncomfortable, that we would like to stop experiencing, but we just don't know how.
Wow.
And so, yeah, it's a great modality for letting things flow and for letting yourself safely explore those sort of shadow aspects of yourself that we tend to want to avoid because they're not too fun to experience.
Right. Yeah,
in
a
the moment.
lot of people don't like to face that stuff head on. That gave me like two different things that I want to ask you about. But first, it's also sometimes referred to as tapping. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And so I think the first time I heard about it was somebody with like getting or at least attempting to get rid of a fear of spiders or something by tapping and focusing on certain meridians and things like that. But this is a service that you offer and you have done that for quite some time. And so how would people contact you to get that service from you?
Probably through my Instagram would be the best. So it's Shanleigh.heals, and Shanleigh is spelled SHANLEIGH.
Perfect.
Just to make it really complicated.
I'll make sure that it's correct on, for everybody to grab that. And what's, I guess this deals with, in a way, the idea that a person would want to investigate their emotional state, their emotional being, and maybe heal that or progress it to a point where it's neutral or positive or in control, whatever that means, some sort of way of getting emotional intelligence and getting to know themselves and all those different ways you could say it. But in my experience, and maybe it's similar for you, a lot of people have no idea that even exists, that it's a thing, that it's something they could put some time and energy to, or something they might benefit from.
Yeah.
So how would we go about sharing this with someone or exposing the idea like, hey, maybe it would help out if you tried some EFT, or maybe some emotional healing might be good for you moving forward?
Yeah. As you're probably familiar with Buddhism, one of the first, I think the first law or idea, principle, is that you will suffer. Human beings will suffer. There will be suffering. And it's kind of a downer. when you hear it like that, it's not that inspiring. And similarly with EFT, if we're just describing it from the standpoint of, well, we're going to be with our suffering for a solid hour, we're going to sit together and be in our suffering, it doesn't sound that great. Really doesn't sound like something that you would want to do. But the reason that it's so beneficial is because underneath that suffering that we don't want to look at, that we don't want to feel, are all of the gifts of expansion, all of the areas that we want to expand into, all of the aspects of ourself that we want to experience, but it's like we can't find them. We're stuck in this little small scope of ourself, and we might have ideas that we could be more expansive, that we could be having more fun, that we could be feeling better, but we don't know how to get there. Like, where is that part of me that feels good? I don't know. I can't find her. I can conceptualize it, but I can't bring that concept into my actual experience. And it feels impossible because of circumstances or this relationship or this idea that I have that I just can't stop thinking about, all of these things. And this is just a human experience. This is not something wrong with you. This is not like just you are so messed up that you can't.
Are you sure?
Everyone else is fine, but you're a mess. But that's kind of what we tell ourselves, right? We're like, it might be possible for other people, but they're not dealing with my brain. They're not dealing with my life circumstances. They're not dealing with my body. They're not dealing with my history. Whatever it is, whatever we've got going on, we're very, very good. The brain is very good at keeping us in survival mode, which is essentially keeping us in fight or flight or some expression of defensiveness and fear and anxiety all the time. And this is externally reflected in our environment because collectively we're in that state, and our media is certainly in that state. And there's a lot in the external frequency of our environment that says, yeah, you should probably stay freaked out. So it's very easy to just convince ourselves like, well, this is reality. So I guess that all these positive ideas I have about how I could be are not real. But again, they're just hidden in that repressed, that part that we don't want to look at, that we don't want to feel. And yet it's actually all that we're feeling, right?
Right.
And that conundrum again, where it's like we're trying to push it away, but what we don't realize is that we're actually amplifying the negative experience by resisting it, by refusing to feel it. So that's why when we do the EFT, or in general, when you're practicing being with yourself, meditation or whatever form, you choose that works for you to do that, you're really allowing the full spectrum of your being to be loved and accepted by your own consciousness. And that to me is what healing is. Healing is not being the best, highest, greatest, grandest, shiniest version of yourself all the time. Healing is loving the full spectrum of your being, including the parts of yourself that you don't like and that don't feel good. When we can be with those parts and we can accept them, then that's freedom. Then that's ease. Then that's presence. So yeah, that's why I would say.
Wow, that's great. That's great. Yeah. I mean, it seems like if somebody wants to increase their physical body or improve their physical body, they've got to go and do the work, whether it's the gym or outside running or whatever version of fitness they do. They've got to be in their suffering, so to speak, for the 20 minutes, the 40 minutes, the hour, whatever it is. Right. And so this is not the physical body. This is the emotional body, but also it has its, its anchors or, in us in many different ways that aren't necessarily like, oh, it's going to make my biceps look better or, I'm going to be more fit. It's more about how our overall system, like a holistic workout, so to speak, and we dive in for however long the session is with our healing for an hour or whatever. And the benefit then from that might actually lead us to some freedom that we weren't even aware of, not just, our pants fit a little better or something like that. There's a different outcome that's very beneficial for a holistic version of our life moving forward.
Yeah, I really like that comparison too with the physical aspect, because I think it's easier for us to wrap our mind around doing something physical that's hard for a positive outcome to come from it. And even though it's the same principle in our mind and in our emotion, in the subtle body, the parts of ourselves that we can't physically see, somehow we think it should be different, that everything should be light and easy there. Right. And if we're experiencing something negative there, it's like more of a threat or something, because it's permeated our consciousness at that point, and we can't like physically push against it. I think that's one of the really satisfying things about working out, is that it's like you're literally pushing and pulling and exerting your energy, and that has wonderful benefits. And I would say everything goes hand in hand. The great thing about doing this emotional inner work is that it really opens up access to internal resources that you can then pull through in your external physical reality, lived life. So, you can access that energy in your workouts, and then it's like your workouts become this like spiritual experience. Everything, the most mundane thing, can become the most fulfilling thing, because you're fully able to access your own life force. Like you're fully present with your consciousness in what you're doing. And there's just no better, like that is bliss, is to be fully present, fully conscious, and like being able to freely choose how you're using your energy and directing it consciously with your own awareness is really powerful. It's what humans were made to do and be, in my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. It seems like there's so many different things pulling from our attention and snapping at us or scrolling at us, or all the different ways that keep us from being present and being aware and being able to witness the beauty of, let's say, a butterfly, or something really small that we overlook very often because it's not monetarily paying us in some way, or it's not really, there's not an immediate tangible return. And that's a lot of what I think the physicality helps for so many of us. If we're doing this, and coming from a sport kind of background, that was my main focus for so long, is let me do the pushing and the pulling and the jumping and the running, and then I will do them all faster and bigger. And, this sound like Daft Punk or something, but someone, I think maybe about 15, 16 years ago, a friend of mine, a hairstylist in LA, great guy, sensitive, cancer, like you and I.
Yeah.
He recommended, have you ever read Emotional Intelligence of Daniel Goleman? I had never heard of it at that point. And since then, I went through it, and it's very beneficial. It's a very informative way for someone to engage in, if you're a reader. Some people aren't readers. If you like to read it, it works. Some people like videos or actual modalities where you're experiencing it with someone and you're being guided. So there's a lot of different ways to get into this stuff, but with the divisions that are present in our society right now, many of them physical and visible, tangible. I've had a lot of people on the female side speak about the emotional intelligence of the masculine or the males. And so I'm always like, I wish I could give this book out to everybody. And then maybe even the playing field. Now, of course, from my side, I've seen, many females on the female side who haven't done the work either. To me, it's all, color, age, gender, it's all present everywhere in an equal amount, so to speak. And we're all really doing the best that we can with what we have and where we are. Whatever we have to share, like this podcast, hopefully might inspire somebody to dive into some EFT, maybe dive deeper in, and then expand that aura to others around in their circle. What do you think about the regularity or the consistency that's needed to heal this sort of trauma in the emotional body? Is it like, I need to go 3 times a week and do 3 sets of 12, and then maybe I'll make some progress? Or, how do you feel like it works for people?
Yeah, that's a great question. I love that question because so many people, when they come to me or when they're asking in general about EFT and does it really work? Is it real? And how many sessions would I need? And, for this issue or that issue. And I would say, really, I look at EFT as more of a practice, and I would liken it more to emotional hygiene than to like a workout or something. Like in the same way that we need to shower every day, we need to emotionally cleanse and clear ourselves every day. So it doesn't mean necessarily you have to do EFT specifically every day. It's more that any kind of upkeep, any kind of self-care that you're practicing, it needs regularity because you've got all of this stuff coming into your environment all the time that's essentially making you dirty again,
Right.
Negative thoughts, they're going to come back. They are. But what we're building in this practice is internal freedom and resilience so that when they come back, you are able to be with them and you're able to just let them move right through. Let them move right through. You're a clear, clean, cleansed conduit for this energy because the energy is not going anywhere. If anything, it's probably going to get more intense. And what you will notice as you do this work over time is that you notice even more. It almost feels more intense just being out in the world, being in the sort of default reality of things, even environments that maybe once didn't really bother you. Now it's sort of, you've developed a sensitivity to. And what that really is just that your energy is more clear. And so you're noticing things more. You don't have all this built up layers of just kind of mess and chaos, all around you. And when you have that cleared out, then you notice it more around you. You're like, oh, that over there is actually something a little messy's going on over there. And then, you can start to use your discernment a little bit more of, well, where do I want to be? And how are these environments or these people or this type of media, this television show, this podcast that I'm listening to, this person that I'm following on my social media, how is that energy actually affecting my energy? Is it amplifying it in a way that feels good? Or is this something that I'm going to have to clean up afterwards? Am I going to have to find myself underneath all of this? So it's a regular practice. I think consistency is key, but again, it's not so much about which modality you use or what. It's really whatever's working for you at the time. So for me, I will do like a deep tap, like an hour at least once a week. And if something big comes up during my week, if I have some kind of crisis, if I'm having some kind of confusion, or if I'm just having a mood, it's just the vibe is off. And I'm like, I get, very dramatic. And I'm like, it's never coming back. It's over for me.
The vibe is gone.
Yes. But then, I tap 10 minutes. I'm like, oh no, it's fine.
It's totally fine.
It's fine. Good. I'm still here. I'm under here. So yeah, I would say do what works for you, but listen more to the inner voice than to that outer chaos that's saying, a specific rigid structure is like what you have to do or have to be, because I think we can sort of overcompensate, overheal ourselves when we get too much into the mentality of like, I'm fixing myself with this, I'm getting better because I'm unwell. Then we kind of get stuck in it, and it becomes like a not quite a punishment, but like a limitation that it's like, well, I'm bad, so I have to do my tapping. And then that's, we're not going to feel better then. So yeah, it's really about the lightheartedness. It's about the flow and the inner awareness of like, what do I need right now? And would it feel better if I cleared out some of what was going on in my consciousness right now? Or, do I need a distraction right now? Sometimes we do. I feel like distractions and maybe some of the more negative connotation activities, they serve a purpose in our life. We can't be 100% on all the time. That's not human. We have to let ourselves relax and be in flow. And sometimes that flow is going to look really bright and shiny, and sometimes it's going to look like a dull moment of regeneration, let's say.
Yeah, I suppose there's so many different forms of freedom. And so if we do some of these healing techniques and we get free from some of the messy entanglements or some of the past traumas, that allows us to experience things and be aware of what's going on, make more progress, and maybe get to that spot where we're engaging with life with the presence and an awareness that brings the moment into a whole new state of aliveness. I don't know if that's a word, but I like it. Aliveness, maybe. But there's also the other types of freedoms. It seems that the freedom from needing to always be a particular way, like you're saying. And sometimes the structure is what allows us to do that in a counterintuitive way. Mm-hmm. So, I know I'm usually working on creating something or writing something, designing something, whatever it might be. And sometimes to turn off is the freedom that I need. And I want freedom in the creative space of my endeavors, in my mind, of course, in my heart, and how I move about. But also sometimes it's to shut that down and maybe watch a show.
Yeah.
I have a list of the top 100 movies and TV shows for expanded consciousness. And I'll put a link on that down in the description as well. But one of the other things that I do to keep that sort of progress moving forward for me, and to keep some of those negative energies away, is I have a playlist that's all specifically curated to upbeat, positive stuff. And if I don't like the title, if I don't like the art, if I don't like the lyrics or something in there just doesn't resonate with, feeding me fuel in a way, then it doesn't go in the playlist. And so it's usually stuff that somehow, I don't know, propels me, like an energy drink of music of some sort. But those freedoms then from needing to always be on, I mean, that's a beautiful way to put it, because so today is a holiday and this isn't technically a day off 100%, doing this right here, right now. But in a way, this is a friendly chat with a friend and discussing what is, I think for both of us, the life purpose is to be in this space and in this vibe. And so what's a better way to enjoy a day away from the productivity or the task list than to do something like this?
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. It's so, I think, important to, first of all, notice, like you just said, noticing how you're evaluating yourself and what states of being you're allowing and what states of being you're rejecting within yourself, And in our culture, we tend to value our productive states the most. That's the version of ourselves that we kind of get the most accolades for.
So we get that out somehow.
Which is great. I mean, it's great to have those tools, those resources to, get you in the mode and keep you in the flow and keep you feeling good. And we have to have our regenerative states too. We have to have our rest. We have to have our modes where we're not creating. We are resting. That's part of being human. And the creativity truly only thrives. I mean, you can't force real creativity, right? I mean, I know we both tried, but you're not going to force some kind of wonderful insight. It comes when you're at ease, right? When you kind of let it go, then it's like, I just thought, of the thing that I just spent 2 hours intensely trying to think of. I just thought of it when I was, walking in the mailbox.
Yeah.
So really letting ourselves spend more time in that regenerative state, I think, is 10 times more valuable than trying to force a productive state all the time. That way, when our energy naturally rises to the creative state, we'll be in flow and we can very quickly do a lot of the doings that we need to do. But the bottom line is there's not actually that much to do. I mean, we create a ton of things to do and busyness in our lives and in our environments. And then we don't really know what to do when there's nothing to do. Then we just have to be with ourselves. And that can be really tough, especially if we've spent the majority of the rest of our time avoiding the parts of ourselves that we don't really celebrate, that we don't really enjoy, that we don't really like.
Right.
Then we're stuck with them in the silence. And so then, we never want to be in the quiet. We never want to be by ourselves. We never want to have to think. And, that's not freedom. Ultimately, that's, again, why we do this work. But it's not just the times that we're doing the work. It's also letting the work go. You've done it. And just like with our workouts, they're only effective if you rest afterwards. Yeah. If you have an off day. Otherwise, you're just tearing your muscle down. You're just literally breaking down your body. That's what workout is. If you take no rest days, you're not going to be in the best shape of your life. You're going to be really tired.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's
Absolutely.
what we do with our mind, with our energy, with our emotions. You know, we're like, go, go, go. I got to go, be on, do better, be brighter, be happier, be, you know, it doesn't work. It breaks us down. So I think learning to rest, learning to do less is really a practice. It's really a skill, just as much as all the other stuff, all the other modalities. So I think resting is the new modality that we all need to learn. That is when the integration happens. You know, that is when it translates from concept to lived, embodied reality. Is during the rest, is during the sleep, it's during the shutdown. And, you know, our environments are so stimulating. We really live in a world, an economy of attention, you know, and we're all sort of at a deficit to some degree, whether we're at the extreme of ADHD, like me, or if we're, you know, just at some other stress state. All of us have these calls for our attention all the time, and it's very depleting if we don't consciously make time to rest that attention and to just not do anything with it.
Yeah.
You know, it's hard. I too struggle with it. I have a day off and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is stressful.
Almost every day, if I don't have a particular, you know, meeting or something, I'll be like, okay, I'm going to take a day off. I'm going to take a day off today. And then like 2 hours in, no, it never happens. I'm back into something, and then it'll be nighttime. Like, oh, tomorrow, I'm taking a day off tomorrow, and you know, an hour, maybe 90 minutes. No, that's the most I can do. But
learning to rest, it's a thing.
I think right now my shut off is reading. I've got, you know, a couple different books, fiction books that I'm enjoying, and
yeah, I love that.
And it sort of helps my brain from the constant, you know, churning, and even then, like you said, being off of it is when sometimes the solution shows up. I might be reading something that's completely, you know, just a story about 1940s Greece or something, and all of a sudden this solution shows up for what I'm working on. Okay, but hey, there it is. You know, grab the paper and the pen, write it down, and get back to it. You know. Yeah. Resting definitely has been. I was doing a new workout for the last month or so. Every day, 3:00. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna mix up my routine and just start doing this. 3:00 every day. I'm gonna do this. And I'm like, okay, 21 days in a row for sure, no stop, create a new habit. And by the end of that, I thought that I would be doing better at each of the workouts. And I was starting to get more and more tired and like dropping back. And I was like, oh yeah, I should probably take a day off or two in between. So I've adjusted that now, and it's working out even better. And like you said, you gotta take that time for the build up. You know, you break it down, and then you got to build it up, and that's the resting and the sleeping, and energy work is a very interesting thing, no matter what modality you're using, or just fitness and nutrition and rest. Water and sunlight and grounding. I mean, there's so many different forms of natural things that don't have to do with the modality necessarily. Even sun gazing can be extremely beneficial. Staying in a balance where it's not tipping over into super drowsiness all the time.
Too much.
Like hyper.
Too little, Yeah, it's definitely, and we're so good at kind of tricking ourselves about what we're doing, you know, convincing ourselves that we're not distracting ourselves, or that we're really enjoying this, or that, you know, it's so funny how as soon as we make it a thing, it kind of changes. It's like, well, this is my goal. And so I'm going to do the 21 days and then I will be a better human. But it's like, we've already lost it. We've already kind of missed the point, and that we're already sort of working against ourselves because we're fighting back some part of ourselves to be a different version, when that different version is really inherent in being with that part that we're trying to push away. And it's just always happening. I feel like for me, that's been one of the biggest revelations of these past few months for me, of realizing that you're always in the process. You're never done. You got to let go of this idea that you're going to get there and just be here.
Yeah.
Doing it again.
How do we grasp that in the mind to say that this is something that's ongoing? It's not, I can't really check it off the list and have it be done for good. Yeah. I was setting up new sort of time blocks on my schedule, like, okay, number 1, number 2, number 3, and then, my workout, my meditation. So I had it out through the entire week and this whole thing. Of course, I have Post-it notes everywhere. I should probably just on my tombstone just put a big Post-it note and change it every week, like. But one of them was my YouTube editing, like for this, and I just realized at a certain point that never stops. I have to adjust my mind, like this is an ongoing thing. Like a client, I might work through them, create what I need to for them, set them up, give them all the assets, and then move on to the next project or whoever else. But with this, it's ongoing. So I was working on how to adjust. So I put an infinity symbol above it instead of a number. This is just, it's always, I'm always going to be editing.
Keep going forever.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh my gosh, okay, well. But still, it's not my favorite thing to do. It's much more fun to talk than to go back and edit all this stuff and be like, oh, that was really good. But I should, then you get decision overload in a way. But what you were saying before about, becoming the better human or that version of ourselves, in a way, it seems like it comes down to that revolving door of self-judgment and judgment. And I see it that way. Like as soon as we're judging someone else, we're judging ourselves. As soon as we're judging ourselves, we're judging someone else. And so there's got to be that balance in a way where we're not judging ourselves as less than or not human enough or whatever term you want to use, and okay with the grace and the compassion for who we are and what we're doing, but also holding ourselves to the responsibility and the opportunity that we have with the gifts we're given. I think that's a really strong point that you find in a lot of the mystery schools, like Freemasonry, so to speak. You've got the pillars of mercy and severity. And in the middle is that spot where the eye of providence lives. And that's like, okay, well, what fire do we hold ourselves to turn on and stay on when we need to get something done or achieve what we're capable of that might be why we're here. It might inspire or help others or create fulfillment in our life. But then the other side, when we do need to take a day off, a full day off, or maybe just go sit by the lake or take the dog for a walk or whatever it might be.
Finding that balance.
Yeah, finding that middle ground.
Access rich resource. When do you access the rest? When do you access the power? And how do you access them in such a balanced way that you're sustaining your life force with them, that you're staying in flow rather than sending yourself into overdrive or sending yourself into a depressed sort of down state.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that awareness too develops, I think, over time as we're doing exactly what we're doing here. You kind of become aware of what your limits are, just like a kid, through poking at them and like discovering like, okay, that was too much. And then listening to that is key, is trusting that intuition, because in this more mature stage of conscious growth, it's not as straightforward as I put my hand on the fire, fire burns, no touchy fire anymore.
Right. Yeah.
It's more complicated because now we're discovering the subtleties of energy. We're discovering the way that certain environments affect us and the way that our energy moves and how we access our own internal resources. And that's such an individual thing. You can learn from other people what worked for them, but what works for you is going to look different. And it's only going to work if you're really monitoring yourself. You're not just checking off a box and doing the thing, but you're actually feeling your own experience and then modulating, iterating on that and doing what works for you, trusting your own internal resources and voice to expand into the most fully expressed, fully realized version of yourself. And I think it's so funny because to this day, literally to this day, there's still that tendency to fight off the looking at and working with the aspects of myself, of ourselves, that we don't want to. We want it to be different than it is. We want to be able to say, no, I'm going to drop this version of me and I'm just going to become that one. Tomorrow or next week or, by this time with these steps, I'm going to be this different person. And we just don't want the answer to be that means we have to be with the current version of ourselves. No, definitely not.
Yeah.
No, it's going to be, this fun thing and that. And all of those resources they're all valuable and they can certainly be used to do that. But we have to use that discipline. We have to hold ourselves to the fire there a little bit and check ourselves. Am I really doing it? Or am I just escaping myself? Am I avoiding? Am I projecting myself into an imaginary land where I already did it and I don't really have to do it? And we kind of run from ourselves in that way. And we just don't want the answer to be like right here now.
It's almost like when we think about freedom in its classical form, and it's probably different for a lot of people, but that idea of financial freedom or travel freedom, or I don't have to go to work, I don't have to pay a bill, I don't have to do whatever it is, and that sort of joyful, giddy celebration mood of like, hey, freedom, oh, I can't wait, it's a day off, or whatever it is. But we also, it seems like, have within the freedom that we already have a responsibility. And that there's a responsibility that comes with freedom. So we have the freedom to direct our mind toward, oh, it's going to be so much better in the future. Or, oh, it was so much better in the past. Or, oh, I'm fine, I don't want to look at that. Or, oh, like, those are all freedoms that we might overlook. But really, it's a part of our choice. And there's a responsibility if somebody wants to expand or upgrade or move their being and progress, forward in some way, or however you want to define the progress of that. And that's an interesting thing. I mean, that it reminds me of The Power of Now, the Eckhart Tolle book. And I think I mentioned this last time. I just didn't like it the first time because it doesn't sound like any fun. And that's kind of what you're saying is like, well, in the moment, like, well, that's a lot of responsibility. I don't know fun there, but there's a freedom to it. And it is like everything you choose has a consequence. Every choice creates a new direction. And that truly is freedom. And we have to have responsibility for, 100% of our life is great. But as close as we can get to that, even in these small bits of how do we assess what we're doing and have the discernment to choose things that move us where we want to go.
Yeah. I love that. I love that responsibility perspective on the choices involved here, because so much of the time with this essentially self-care stuff, I still will feel some kind of guilt, or, I hear this a lot from clients or from even friends and family, who are interested in this kind of work, but they're like, I can't do that because I have responsibilities, and because I have people who depend on me, and because I have to get this done, I'm running this business. Like, all of the things that are going on around us and all of the responsibilities that we carry, we think of this work as being for ourselves, but truly, the environment that is created by us. It's created by people. And the reason the environment is as chaotic as it is because we haven't been taught on a collective level self-care. So you have a whole bunch of dysfunctioning people thinking this is the only way, this is reality, I have to just survive, I have to do this, I have to protect my children, I have to survive and get this job and make the money, and just living in this state of threat. And of course it feels sort of selfish to turn all the focus inward and take care of yourself in that moment, but it's also the only way. It's the only way to discover those resources and to become the person that these family members, that these friends, that this community, that this work that you're doing can rely on. Otherwise, you will burn out. You will get flattened by the energy out there. It is too much otherwise.
Yeah.
So I love that perspective that it really is a responsibility to take care of yourself, because the more people that we have showing up in this way means a more functional world. And it means for all of the people who aren't able to do that, who just, they can't see it, they can't go there, they're just in their default mode and suffering and creating suffering for the rest of us. It helps if we can at least be in our own energy, the few of us that are awakening to that reality, then we can hold that frequency. We can hold that higher reality to overlay and keep the rest of the world in some kind of frequency of sustenance, so that becomes more and more available to the people who can't see it, because this is not an us and them scenario. We're all in this environment, on this earth, in this humanity together. And so it is the responsibility of those of us who can see, oh, I have some inner work to do here. It's our responsibility to do that work so that we can hold that light. And the great news is when we do it, it actually feels pretty good and it improves our lives. So, there is something in it for us, but it's not selfish work. It is for the world. When we heal ourselves, we are holding that frequency of light for everyone to access and to see that it's possible, that there's another way to live.
Yeah.
And that has infinite value.
So well said. Thank you so much for everything that you've shared. I think the next week I'll be focused on shining my light and taking time off that I need to recharge, whether it's physical or emotional. And appreciate you sharing about EFT, the emotional freedom technique, and all the other ways that we can look at freedom from within and to the external life. And hopefully you're able to have a little bit of freedom for the rest of the 4th of July, the Independence Day. Yes, thank you so much as always. And I'll put all the contact information for you within the video description and everything. And look forward to chatting again very soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is great, as always.
All right. Have a beautiful day.